Hello, my name is Ellie. She took over my father's restaurant after he died, but she mismanaged it and was greedy with money. So when I told Mom I wanted to apply to all of the greatest universities in the country, she laughed in my face and told me I should rob a bank since she wasn't going to pay for it. She seemed to relish making my life difficult. I was aware that she had money from my father's life insurance, but she squandered it all on herself. She forced me to wear awful, old clothes that were too small for me, and she refused to purchase new textbooks for me. She claimed that school was a waste of money, that she would not spend her hard-earned money to help me succeed, and that she was already a mother when she was my age. Whatever. This wasn't my fault after all. We had a large exam at school one day, and this was my only chance. If I did well, I'd receive a full scholarship to the university. I woke up early, but upon reaching my bedroom door, I found it locked. I screamed for my mother to unlock it, but she pretended she didn't hear me and then went. She crept into my room in the middle of the night and stolen my phone, so I couldn't even call the school to inform them. I considered jumping out the window, but we lived on the 6th floor and I'd most likely die. Fortunately, one teacher encouraged me to apply to those universities and convinced the school to let me repeat the exam. She dropped by our house one night to speak with my mother about scholarship applications. My mom had just gotten home from work and was feeling down, but when the teacher mentioned a scholarship, her ears perked up. Mom abruptly altered her tune and said I could apply, but only if there was a scholarship. My teacher assured my mother that I would receive one, alleviating any worries and settling the matter. I completed all of the applications and went to the post office with Mom to mail them. I then waited. Mom made me work in the restaurant and assigned me awful tasks such as cleaning the toilets and taking out the trash. Months had gone by, and I had received no response from any of the universities. But I'd already been to the post office and seen my mother pass them over. So the universities would have undoubtedly received my applications. Was I turned down? Mom was behaving considerably cockier than usual. She started buying herself expensive clothes because the business was doing well. Then she got a new automobile one day. She merely chuckled every time I inquired whether she had any mail for me. Let's face it, honey, you're not getting in. You're too stupid. Return to the kitchen now. Those dishes aren't going to wash themselves. Then the letters began to arrive, all of the rejection letters. It was impossible for me to believe. In every exam, I received an A. What had happened? Every time a rejection letter arrived, I burst into tears, and my mother always laughed and told me that I was stupid and would have to work as a dishwasher for the rest of my life. Now that I'd finished school, summer vacation was coming to an end. I was supposed to start university a few days later, but instead I was working as my mother's slave. Mom was really going all out now. Every day, we drove to work together, and then she would depart after about 10 minutes, only to return at the end of the day. It was impossible for me to believe. Then, at the end of the month, she'd grant herself a large raise, despite the fact that I wasn't even making the minimum wage. My friends all left for university while I was doing dishes. After that, my life took a turn for the worse. I was quite depressed. My friends eventually stopped contacting me. They couldn't figure out why I wanted to work in Mom's restaurant. But what other option did I have? Mom was ineffective, and I refused to let Dad's legacy die in this manner. I was the only one who could keep the restaurant open. I soon began dating Bernie. He was one of the chefs, and we got along well since my mother drove both of us insane. She was seldom at work these days, and she kept her personal life so private. I began to suspect that she had met someone. She appeared to be different these days. Meanwhile, I was working all day, every day. I decided to reapply to Harvard after 6 months. I dropped my application in Bernie's car, and he promised to take me to the post office after work. That, however, never occurred. Someone came running into the restaurant during our shift to tell us that my mother had passed out on the street. Bernie and I dashed outside to see her laying on the sidewalk. We put her in Bernie's car and drove her to the hospital, but she woke up on the way and stated she had collapsed from weariness. Then I entirely forgot about posting the letter. Why was she so exhausted? She was obviously dating someone, and then it occurred to me that she might have another job. She seemed to have a lot of money. Later that night, I dashed to the car, but it was gone when I remembered the application. I searched everywhere, but it remained elusive. When I asked Bernie about it, he stated he hadn't seen it. But then I realized I didn't believe him. When I told him I intended to go to Harvard, he acted strangely. So what if he purposefully concealed it? What is its location? I yelled, but he claimed to have no idea what I was talking about. I turned his house upside down looking for it, and I got so angry that I simply left. Then Bernie and I called it quits. He said I had no right to hold him responsible for something like that. When my mother found out, she told me, "Bernard was too good for you, babe. You know, a little out of your league." I burst out laughing when she said it. I snatched her purse from the counter and hurled it at her. She sprang out of the path, and everything in her bag flew away. I've never seen her scramble so quickly to pick stuff up. She was obviously concealing something. I walked out of there feeling like the world's biggest loser. What was I up to? I'd ruined everything. I decided I didn't want to work in a restaurant any longer. Being around Bernie was too weird. I began packing all of my belongings, and my life took a bad turn. The cops arrived and arrested me. They informed me that I had not paid taxes for 3 years and that I may face up to 2 years in prison. What? But that didn't make sense. I informed them that they were looking for the wrong person, that my mother was the owner, and that I just worked for her. But then they presented me with all the paperwork that proved the restaurant was registered under my name and had been transferred after my father's death. I explained that I was only 20 years old and that this was impossible, that I hadn't signed anything. But they just laughed and shouted excuses, excuses. My mother arrived at the courthouse and stated that she would be seeing me sign everything and that it was my responsibility. I couldn't even speak because I was so startled, and then I went to prison. It was dreadful. My mother was a psychopath. It's all made clear now. Instead of paying taxes, she used the money to fuel her extravagant lifestyle, all those expensive clothes, and that automobile. It made me feel ill. I have to pay the price now. My mother never came to see me in prison. The restaurant had closed down, and I had not heard from Bernie since. He probably didn't want to talk to a criminal, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I had no idea what I was going to do when I came out of prison. I had no intention of contacting my mother. I didn't want to see her again. I applied for numerous positions, but no one would hire an ex-prisoner. And to my surprise, I landed a job. And you won't believe where I was hired. Harvard. Harvard. I was tasked with cleaning the toilets, and I couldn't stop laughing. I had always wanted to attend Harvard. I was scrubbing toilets at the time. The universe was mocking me. What a farce, but I couldn't say anything. It was preferable to nothing. When I arrived at work one day, there were a lot of people around. It dawned on me that it was graduation day. I then ran a fast calculation, and then I realized it was my graduation. I dashed into the bathroom, which I would later clean, and locked myself in one of the stalls. Then I busted out crying. My life was a shambles. When I heard 2 girls enter, I abruptly stopped crying. They were discussing someone, and her name was the same as mine. I can't believe Ellie is graduating at all. She fails every exam, I mean. Yes, and isn't it strange how ancient she looks? She can't possibly be 25. She appears to be in her 40s. They then walked out, laughing. I wiped away my tears and proceeded to fetch my mop and bucket. I started cleaning the restroom, but then I became curious and went to the back of the hall to watch the graduation ceremony. I pretended to mop, but I couldn't help but notice everyone going up to receive their diplomas. I was supposed to be up there. When I turned to go, the oddest thing happened. They were crying out to me. I wondered if I was hallucinating. Then I realized that maybe someone else had the same name as me. Then I noticed her, my mom. She walked onto the stage wearing a gown. I misplaced the mop. I was stunned, and a few individuals turned to face me. And one individual even urged me to stop talking. My mother was graduating from Harvard in my honor. Then it just clicked into place. The reason she skipped work every day. She got all this money all of a sudden. Obviously, she had taken advantage of my scholarship. She even gone so far as to have me locked up so I wouldn't find out. I considered storming the platform and shaming her right then and there. But then I got a bright idea. I would allow her to believe that everything was fine for a while before revealing who had been foolishly defeated. I crept out of the hall, waited until everyone had left, and then proceeded to the drink ceremony on the grass. Then I dialed 911 and told them everything. From a nearby tree, I watched as they ran out onto the lawn to arrest her. Everyone around her was astonished. It was incredible to watch. As they marched her away, she began to scream. It was now my mother's turn to go to prison. Not only for identity theft, but also for faking my signature on a business deal and falsely imprisoning me. Although I hadn't spoken to her in years, witnessing her condemnation was perhaps the most satisfying event of my life. She completely ruined my life. She continued to claim that she was sorry and that she simply wanted to experience what it was like to be a student because she'd never had the chance since becoming a teen parent. Anyway, the good news is that Harvard has publicly apologized and offered me a spot for next year. I can hardly wait. And as for my mother, I hope she enjoys prison since she'll be there for a long time.